the, the overall design flow.
So chip design flow basically.
So today we intend to cover chip design flow. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
And different abstractions linked to it. So how many of us remember what kind of stages are there in our design flow?
First stage was design analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Design implementation.
Then design implementation.
Okay.
So
Then
design
verification.
the boundary part and
Characterization.
then characterization and
characterization. Okay, good. I'm happy. You remember quite a bit. So yes, the first stage in fact was or is design analysis, where there are different. So we will go into each of these stages one by one and look at what each step entails. Okay, and don't hesitate to stop me, ask questions, or add anything if you feel like. Okay. So the first stage is design analysis, where the first step is requirement analysis. So what do you understand by requirement analysis? What do you think is requirement analysis?
the customer requirement, I think.
Specifications that we want in the circuit.
So basically demand of the market, what exactly is required in the market.
Yeah. So over here, what we are looking at is what is it that the customer would pay for, would be willing to pay for the price point where we want to target our product. So if I want to come up with the next generation of iPhone 12, iPhone, for example, now iPhone 13, what would the customer be willing to pay the premium for next year? So that would become my requirement. And then we do the next step, which is called the functional and test specifications. What would come into this, according to you?
To test the functionality of our design on the basis of requirements.
So what we test required by our design? What kind of functions we require?
Yes, what kind of functionality is required? For example, you may say that when Apple came up with this infrared face recognition feature, at that time, what functionality is required? You need to understand that, okay, it has to be infrared and it should recognize the face and it should unlock the screen. If the face recognition is say above or a face match is above say 80%, it should also unlock the screen, or 90%, it should also unlock the screen. And very importantly, when you define the functional specifications, you also define how will you test that your device is meeting those specifications in various conditions. So as soon as you define the functionality, how to test it is also defined simultaneously. This is something which is not commonly understood and done. Are you able to appreciate the significance of this aspect?
Sir, I'm not able to understand how this test specification can be introduced here.
Okay. So let us take the same feature, the face recognition feature that you're talking about. So how would you test this camera now? If I want to say that Apple would have this camera in it, how would you test it?
So most probably I would be taking some samples of pictures or photos and then seeing the quality or what the output is, then analyzing that output.
So I may say that I will take 10,000 photos of one person. Okay? And when any of those 10,000 photos is put in front of this camera system, it should be able to recognize it as the right person and should unlock the screen. That could be one way to test it.
Okay. So like we are specifying the test specification from an overall, like
from the functional perspective. From the functional perspective, this is the functionality I wanted. How do I test that this functionality is being met?
Okay.
है ना? Because finally, whether some other functionality happens or not happens doesn't matter. Functionality that I'm selling to my customer should definitely work fine. And I should know how to test it. This I should know early on, even when I'm defining the specification.
Okay, and so the functionality you're talking about, it is in terms of specification, like it needs to have a 40 megapixel camera, or should be able to detect that in terms of.
Yes, so it is specifications, so functional specifications and test specifications. Functional specifications would say it should be infrared. It should be able to identify the person even in an ambient light of, let us say, a dark room. And it should be able to, differentiate between two brothers, for example, who look very much alike but are not twins.
Okay, so like the kind of thing we see in the ads of basically.
That is one aspect of it. So I gave you an Apple example and the face recognition example because that you already see in the ads and it is easy to relate to them.
Yes.
But for any chip, even if you have to design an FPGA, okay, even for an FPGA, the user would have the specification that its DDR should operate at 2 gigahertz, that it should be able to support this kind of throughput. It should be able to give this kind of, dry stone MIPS per second, whatever.
Okay. So that also comes here.
Everything.
Okay.
Because I gave you a user, I took the example of an Apple face recognition thing. I gave test specifications for that. But when I talk of functional specs, which does not really materialize into the user or a consumer application, then I will anyway have technical functional specifications there.
Okay. So here also the engineer will be working, engineering team would be working to define the specifications.
Yes.
Okay.
So we will define the specification in consultation with the customer who is going to use the product, and also the test specifications in consultation with the customer. Deepank, you had raised your hand.
Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Sir, I had a simple doubt that if we are too strict to define the verification or the testing method in the beginning, but if the specification changes at a later stage, then won't it be a tedious task to repeat everything?
You tell me one thing. If the specification changes, you anyways need to come back to the initial phase. So let us say you were in this stage. At this point of time, the customer said, no, I do not want this camera to work in infrared light. I now want this camera to work at regular light. With regular light, I want a laser to be generated there. So do you realize that everything would change for you also? The kind of energy that your image sensors will now capture will be very different from what they would capture in an infrared light scenario.
Yes. Yes.
So you will anyway need to come back to this stage again because the functional specifications have changed.
Yes. Okay. I was just concerned about the timing part. Yeah. Basically.
If the functional specifications are changing, everything would need to be redefined.
Okay.
And as soon as you change the functional specification, test specification should also be reviewed all over.
So my actually point was that maybe we can, if we are a bit mature state, then we can define how to test, because then we will be sure that this is like the final product specs required. No change can be done beyond that.
As a designer, you may want that, but as a customer, would you want that? Suppose, let us put it like this. You want to go and order a double bed for your room.
Yes.
And you want it to be 6 feet by 6 feet.
Okay.
Now, would you give the specification to the carpenter right away, or say that, okay, I want it to be 6 feet by 6 feet, but I will tell you how I will measure 6 feet after you have cut the plywood?
No. Yeah. Thank God.
He will tell you which scale you're going to use right away, so that he also uses the same scale. Is it not?
Right, sir. Right.
So the test specifications have to be built alongside functional specifications. There is no other way.
Okay, sure.
And this is what many times I see designers miss out on. They think only in terms of functional specification. They forget that test specification is equally important to be defined right there.
Correct. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Sir, do we actually making a hardware and then testing it or something else?
You tell me. This is a chip design flow, na? Entire thing is a chip design flow, is it not?
Yes, sir.
So in this flow, you actually get silicon in your cell phones, is it not?
Yeah,
So
but starting procedure, na, sir. Do we actually making?
I'm sorry.
Like the wafer fabrication and all things are later on. So are we actually making it in the initial stages and then testing it?
We are making the specifications, Moin. अभी तो हम specifications बता रहे हैं. For example, जो भी carpenter वाला example दिया था, in this what did we say? We said that I will tell the carpenter I want a double bed which is 6 feet by 6 feet, and that I will measure 6 feet by using this particular scale. I have not built the bed yet. I have not even purchased the plywood yet. But I know what I want in my bedroom. That's where.
So testing means, is it a simulation or something related to this?
No, testing. So for a carpenter thing, you will want to actually measure physically the dimensions of your bed, na? But the physical thing that you're getting is working exactly the way it was intended to be. Right?
Yes, sir.
So you will actually have to characterize and test the silicon wafers that are out, or whatever system it is.
Yes, sir.
Vaishnav?
Sir, yes, sir. So you mean to say that we are just giving the specifications but not actually testing them, like functional and test specifications. We are just mentioning them.
What do we test? अभी तो product design शुरू ही नहीं हुआ.
Yeah.
Product design has not even started yet. What do we test? We are simply telling this is how we will test.
Okay.
Okay. Pranjal?
So basically, this is all the documentation part, na?
Yes, this is in a way the specification, the statement of work creation part. This is still just documentation, no design implementation yet.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. In fact, just after this step, if you look, the step is called partition and plan. What do you think this means?
Dividing the whole strategy.
Dividing
the whole strategy of how to implement all the things related with it.
Yeah. So for example, if you go back to the Apple face recognition example, in that particular example, it will mean which team will do what kind of work. Who will design that laser, the infrared laser? Who will design the hardware, the chip? Who will write the software which does the recognition or which does the analysis? Okay. Who will integrate all of it? And the plan as to by when will different milestones of different such partitions be completed so that I finally have my Apple phone available in the market by Thanksgiving so that people can purchase it for Christmas.
Yes, sir.
So that is partitioning and planning. All of this, the design has not even started.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Any questions still here? Yes, Gagandeep.
Sir, if you talk about, sir, in memory, sir, when we say for a room, that when we say that we want to make the connections that we want to, diffuse the transistor in the highest layers. So basically that is, in that context, we say that if the customer says that now in the later stage of making the memory, at that point of time, if the customer says, I want this code to be embedded and not the one that I I have given to you. So is that also not the functional specification that is being changed, and then we are not really going to the design analysis once again, we are just changing the connections?
So it depends, Gagandeep. Like, depends how big a change the user is asking for and what is the stage of the design. If the change is really that doesn't require any change in the design implementation, you will not go back to the scratch board, the drawing board all over again. But if the specification change is very significant, then you will need to do that. And you should be aware of this, that you cannot really change specification after the implementation has begun or has kind of closed, whatever. Because that means a huge turnaround time. It can mean a huge turnaround time.
Yes.
So usually a good amount of time is spent on this stage, the design analysis stage, because if this is not done correctly, all the effort that goes subsequently, so this effort 10 people will do. But the design implementation effort, for example, if it's about a Intel microprocessor, the typical effort that goes into a microprocessor is 200 man-years, 300 man-years. So many people working across multiple teams, across various sites, are involved in making a full Intel microprocessor. And if the first phase, design analysis phase, is not good enough, is kind of carelessly done, then all those 200 man-year effort can simply go down the drain. You will come up with a product which will not sell in the market. So this is one of the most important parts. So in this part, what kind of things do you get to do in India? So since there are very few end-to-end product manufacturers in the country, not much of this job gets done in India. But in every company, whether it is TI or ST or Samsung or Micron, all these three kinds of jobs exist. They typically exist in the headquarters. Samsung has these kind of jobs in Korea. ST has these kinds of jobs in Italy and France. TI has them in the US. Micron has them in the US. So this kind of design analysis or product definition thing is primarily in the headquarters, or then somewhere very close to the customer. Wherever they are getting their maximum sales from, they would have some such jobs in that place also. Okay. Once the product specification, Animesh, you wanted to ask something?
Hello. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
So, yeah, sir, I wanted to ask if these test specifications, right? If we would like to test it on, for example, what we were talking about, an Apple Air face recognition system. If we would like to test first that application on an FPGA which is reconfigurable before trying to release these test specifications, we would want to test it on an FPGA, right? Before starting the chip.
We don't know. So we will come where the FPGA and such kind of work would come in. I will share about where we can do that emulation part. Okay. So abhi nahi. When the customer is defining the specification, he has no clue how you would implement it. He is simply telling you that I want this.
Okay.
Only when you enter into the design implementation phase, you will look at how to validate and verify it.
Okay.
FPGA is largely about verifying your design, is it not?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You need to have a design first. So a
Yes.
design entry has to happen before that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So in the design implementation stage, we first do the design entry. Now I know that my team is to develop that face recognition hardware. Okay, the sensors will give me some data, and I have to now design the hardware which would do the calculations to ensure that face recognition happens accurately. So I do the design entry. I make it in RTL or something like that. After the design entry, I synthesize it. I say that, okay, I wanted adder there, I wanted a multiplier here, I wanted a comparator here, and so on, and I synthesize it. I make those connections. And then I simulate it, saying thereby that the adder and the multiplier and the connectivity of them is working fine. It is at this stage, when you are simulating, and if the simulations come fine, it is at this stage that you may also want to emulate. That is where the FPGA or other emulation systems would come in. Okay. And then you enter into the stage of physical design and layout. This is hardcore implementation. And once that implementation is done, you will simply do a design verification that whatever chip I have now designed, I have now implemented, that is in line with the design specifications that I had. Okay. And then what we would do is we call it as a tape out. Then we tape out our chip and send the design to the foundry. In the foundry, yes, Raghav?
So the design verification step you have put it at the very end, but design verification, as I can remember, it comes after synthesis also, and like after this,
yes,
at various stages. So what kind of design verification are you like focusing on here and the step? Because
so this is so the design verification that I have put on this slide over here at the bottom of the design implementation stage is exhaustive. It includes simulation-based verification, includes stages like DRC, LVS, ERC checks, everything. Package verification, everything is done in this stage. Only after everything is fine, you send something for mask making.
Okay, and so like we are also including the formal verification and those kind of things.
Yeah, we will look at that in the next slide because that is too much detail. So
okay, sir.
Over here, I've just put the entire design implementation phase into 5 stages. So on the next slide, we will look at all those detailed, that these 5 stages are actually a mix of 20 other activities, and each of those 20 activities is a different job profile. We will look at that in the next slide.
Yes, sir, sure, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Rajneesh, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Sir, in this design implementation, sir, this logic partitioning and planning is present in this physical design also, no, sir? This.
Yeah. The floor plan placement, everything. We will talk about in the next slide. Don't worry. Design implementation, we will go into much more details in the next slide.
Sir, these two are different, no? This design analysis, partitioning and plan and.
Yes, they are very different. Partitioning that I talked about in design analysis was which team where will do which kind of designing.
Okay. Sir.
That was the overall partitioning of the project.
Okay.
Sir?
Yes.
So I don't understand what's the difference between synthesis and physical design and layout.
We will see. In the next slide, we will see, Meher.
Because, I realize this might be a little different, but from what we studied about FPGA, like when you're doing synthesis, you are doing your mapping and routing. I mean, all that placement and all that, isn't that a part of your layout itself?
So we will see that in the next slide, Meher. Just wait a little.
Sure.
Okay. So keep this question alive in yourself. We will see that in the next slide. Let me just give you a complete top level overview first, then we'll go into the detail. Okay. So once we are sure that the chip that we have designed, the layout that we have designed, everything is really good to go, we send it to the foundry. The foundry first sends it to the mask shop where masks are made. And once the masks are available, you start to do the wafer fabrication. Now, depending on a technology, there could be 39 masks, there could be 28 masks, there could be 47 masks, or there would be 60 masks that a design or a wafer would need to go through to make the entire design. So it would depend on technology and the choices that you have made regarding the design. Okay. And the more the number of masks, the more the time it takes in the fabrication facility, because it is more number of times it has to sit into machines and run through it. And also higher the risk of yield loss, because every mask step, every additional step in the foundry means some yield loss at every step. So every extra step means some extra yield loss that can happen. Yes, Vaishnav.
Sir, what is this mask exactly, sir?
Yeah, we will come to that. So mask is like something that we will use to fabricate a design. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So when we will look at the fabrication process in probably the next class, or hopefully today, I don't know, you will get a view of what a mask is. Okay.
Okay.
So Yeah. Once the wafers are fabricated, they are sent for testing and characterization. So the first test that happens is wafer prototype test. What does it mean? It means that at the wafer level itself, without even cutting the wafer into dies and cutting it into chips. So you know how a wafer looks? A silicon wafer is for example, a 300 millimeter wafer means that there is this circular silicon wafer, thin piece of silicon, which is 300 millimeters wide. So 12 inches wide. The diameter is 12 inches. And on this wafer, there would be, these, I think that PPT has
So
got.
did you just say that the diameter is 12 inches?
Yeah, the wafer is 12 inches.
Isn't that quite big? I mean,
Yes, it is big. On one wafer, you can have thousands of dies that can be fabricated.
And sir, what exactly are dies?
Die is the chip that will go into your phone.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But yeah, you manufacture all of them together, so many of them together, so that the overall cost can be low.
Okay, so basically we are manufacturing many dies on the same wafer, and then those dies can be later separated.
Yes.
Just to decrease the manufacturing costs. So we are manufacturing them in bulk.
Yes.
Right.
So the first test you do is on wafer level itself. That, okay, let me see how many dies in this particular wafer are working. After that wafer prototype test, you identify the good ones, and only those good dies you package. You don't package the bad ones. After packaging, you do another testing.
So we are testing the good ones twice, effectively.
Yes. So hoga kya? So as I said, every step that you take, there could be some failures happening there. So on the wafer, you saw that, okay, out of the 1000 dies, 990 dies are working. So you say, okay, I will package these 990 dies. After packaging, out of those 990, 980 may be working. So only those 980 you will then send to the customer.
Sir, but why will something like that happen? I mean, are we using different tests in, both the levels? I mean, base prototype test and then package prototype test.
Okay. Let us put it like this. Have you done some painting any point of time in your life?
Yeah.
So the first step you do is sketch it with pencil.
Yeah.
Then you start to put some colors into it.
Yeah.
So you suppose you have to put, you have to make a rainbow. So you have to put 7 colors next to each other.
Yes, sir.
Now I want only that particular painting to be shipped in which there is no overlap of any color.
Yeah.
So what can happen? After the first step, that is I made it with pencil. Okay, pencil में तो कुछ overlap का कोई possibility नहीं था. So it is fine. There is no yield loss. After the red color, again, there is no yield loss. But as soon as I put the orange color, I might end up overlapping it with red somewhere.
Okay.
So that particular painting goes for a toss.
Yeah.
So every extra step that you do, there can be some yield loss.
Yes, sir.
So when you package, what are you doing? You are connecting wires from the pins of the package to the pads on your die.
Okay.
There could be some error in that connection. Therefore, yield loss.
Okay.
So you have to test after every step.
Got it.
Yeah. Yes, Gagandeep and Rajat.
Sir, I have a question regarding the wafer. Sir, we have wafers for, making the dies on it. But sir, for mask also, is there any wafer, and how do we make the mask? Because we have to inscribe some pattern on it.
So wait, we'll come to mask a little later. As I already mentioned, we will look at what a mask is a little later. Don't worry.
Okay.
So in wafer prototype test, is it we are just cutting each and every die and then testing it separately, whether whether the dies are working or not, or is it like we are just testing a bit a part of some that wafer? Is it like
So
that?
in a wafer prototype test, you just keep the entire wafer there. You bring probes and you put them on every die one by one.
Okay, sure.
Okay, and you test it. Now, suppose you see that there is this entire row which is not working. You will not cut the dies of that row into independent pieces. You will just discard the entire row when you are cutting the wafer.
Okay.
Sir.
Yes.
So what do you mean by the term characterization? Is this?
Characterization essentially means what is the character of this. So characterization essentially means that, okay, I wanted to design a processor which would work at 1.2 gigahertz. Okay, but I designed it for 1.2 gigahertz, but due to some reasons, it could work only at 1.1 gigahertz on silicon. Can it happen?
Okay.
So I need to know at what speed it is working. So that is why it is called characterization. So it is the characteristic of that die that this die is working at 1.1 gigahertz and not 1.2 gigahertz.
Okay, so like I started with a certain kind of a goal in mind, but if it is like differentiating from that, I need to know that, okay, how much it is.
Even if it has met the goal, even if it has met the objective, I need to know that this is 1.2 gigahertz or 1.21 gigahertz.
Okay. So like finally it is completed. Now what is like,
yeah,
what kind of chip
what
it is?
Is it? Okay. What is it? Finally it is completed. Now what is it?
Okay.
Look at it like this. So childbirth. So you do an ultrasound, you do everything, you know that the child is developing. So I know none of you have children yet, but some point of time you will have probably. So, you know, ultrasound and all those tests, you see that the child is growing well. But finally, when the child birth happens, you get to see, okay, इसकी आंखें जो हैं पापा से मिलती हैं, lips जो हैं मम्मी से मिलते हैं, and all that characterization happens.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. So that is what it is. Okay, what is this? What is this die finally? It is working fine, but what is it finally? Is it operating at 1.2 gigahertz, 1.24 gigahertz, or 1.16 gigahertz? It is working fine. At what frequency? Similarly, at what power consumption? At what leakage? At what battery life? All those things. Everything is characterizing that particular die.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Shivam, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I want to ask that whether the number of transistors that are to be manufactured on this dies is decided by your requirement or specifications, or is there any rule that a fixed number of transistors or will be manufactured on the particular die?
You tell me, what should it be?
Sir, it should be according to our requirement.
Yes. So it can happen. For example, someone may say that I need 1 billion transistors to be put. Now the technology team may come back and say, see, if you put 1 billion transistors, your die will become this big and the yield will be less. Instead, we recommend that you put 500 million on this chip and add another die, which is another 500 million. And together you will be able to come up with a much, much cheaper and a more efficient product. That may happen. But you would want to put number of devices based on what your requirements are.
Yes.
Okay. There could be a technology constraint. इससे ज़्यादा डालोगे तो risk है. You can accommodate that. That's a different thing.
Yes.
Yes, Faisal.
So when we are saying that we want, our goal is 1.2 gigahertz and somehow we got 1.1 gigahertz. Now, why the customer would accept our chip now?
So you tell me, do you purchase an Intel i3 processor or not at all?
Okay.
I will sell it cheaper.
Yeah. Sir, but if we want 1.2 gigahertz, so we should aim a bit higher, like 1.25 or 1.3. Then we'll get
whatever.
It can be done.
Finally, what I need to do is I need to characterize and tell this is 1.1 gigahertz. I will sell it $100 cheaper.
Okay.
That I still need to do.
Okay. वो negotiation हो गया फिर.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
And something that is working at 1.4 gigahertz, I will tell the user, oh, this is very low power, and I will sell it as i7.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
You see? So I still need to know this information.
Okay.
How I achieve, what I achieve, that is a different thing. That is strategy, designer strategy. We are presently talking about what does the flow entail. The flow entails identifying and sorting them. So wafer test and die sort, package test and sort. If these packages are operating at this frequency, these packages at this frequency, and therefore I will sell them separately.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I finally ship it to the customer. Finally. Okay.
Sir, after the wafer prototype test, so here we have tested the functionality, whether our die is working properly or not, or for every row or column, whatever we say. But then, sir, will we do packaging after that only, and then move to package prototype test and then to wafer test, or would it be like wafer prototype test and then wafer test and die sort?
So see, wafer is when all the dies are together.
Yes, sir.
Package is after you have separated these dies and packaged them into their ICs. So
Yes,
after
sir.
a package test, wafer test can't happen.
Yes, sir.
So in the last step, ship production units, when I say wafer test and die sort, that step is not coming after packaging. That step is coming after wafer prototype test.
Okay.
Because at times what happens is, for example, that Apple face recognition thing. You said that laser someone would make, image sensor someone would make, and the computational processor someone else would make. Something ST made, something Samsung made, something Sony made. So now you cannot package just the sensor and say, okay, this is a chip. Apple had a product in mind where all these three dies would be put together. So you're sending only the wafers and dies to the customer. You're not sending packages to the customer.
Yes.
So at times you send wafers and dies to the customer. At times you send packages. Whatever it is, you do the testing, and only after that testing you send them.
Yes. Okay.
Sir?
Okay? Yes.
Sir, in the wafer prototype test, we put the probe on the each die when it is part of wafer. We test it whether it is functionally working or not. And then in the wafer test, what kind of test we are doing on that? What is the difference between these kind of tests? Like,
so wafer prototype test and wafer test could be similar, but the last stage involves die sorting.
Okay. So like we have characterized before, now we are like putting them different categories.
Yes.
Sir, can you elaborate on die sorting again?
Yes, that okay, this die is working at 1.2 gigahertz, this die at 1.4 gigahertz, this die at 1.1. So sorting them into different bins and saying this one sell at $100 cheaper, this one sell $200 costlier, this one sell at the target price.
Right. So I mean, all the dies in the wafer do not need to be of the same type.
May not be. Yeah, may not be.
Okay. So, sir, I mean, do these steps happen in parallel? Design, characterization, and ship production units.
Depends. They could, they may not.
Okay.
Because it depends from product to product. Yeah. Depends from product to product.
Yeah, because the thing is, you can do die sort right after the package prototype test. So like,
No.
I don't see why
wait. Meher, if you already packaged it, then you can't, then there is no longer die sort, then there is package sort.
Okay. Like package sort involves what exactly?
Same thing. I mean, it is just that you are shipping packages instead of dies.
Okay, so I mean, then what's okay, you're performing wafer prototype test and you're performing wafer test and die sort. Instead of that, you can just do wafer prototype test and follow that up with die sort. So
yeah, I mean, you can do that.
Okay, so like that additional wafer test is just like optional?
So again, it depends. If the wafer prototype test, because of it depends on the fab conditions. Suppose you say that wafer prototype test was done at at TSMC, and wafer test and die sort Qualcomm would do at its own facility. So testing has to happen twice then.
Right. So it depends if it's happening at the same place or different.
Yeah. If it is Intel, it will only happen once.
Okay.
Sir?
Yes, Deepan?
Sorry to interrupt. Sir, my question is, sir, so there can be variation in the thing which we are shipping. We can ship the package, or we can ship the wafer, or we can ship the die, or because as you said that at different company, different type of tests can happen. So that means there can be different type of product which is being shipped. Is that correct assumption?
Yes. There are, for example, RFID tags that you keep in your shirts. Those are small chips which are sent only as dies, which are shipped only as dies on strips of paper.
Okay.
So all kinds of forms and features appear in these shipping parts. So I see the hands of Vaishnav and Gagandeep also raised.
Hello, sir. I want to ask that we are doing die sorting, and then we are going to do the package sort also. So it looks like that we are doing a die sort, which might not really affect what we sell, because at the end, if I sort the packages, then I need to ship those only after categorizing. So
yeah, but if I'm shipping dies, Gagandeep, if I'm shipping dies only, then I don't need to package them, no?
Yes, sir. In that case, it would be.
Yeah. So not something that has already been packaged will not be wafer tested and die sorted. It will only be packaged, tested, and sorted. Something which is being shipped as a wafer will be wafer tested and die sorted.
So it is about what I am going to ship.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Vaishnav.
Yes, sir. Actually, you were saying that wafer pe to kuch bhi ho sakta hai, like i3 or i7. For example, if you take an Intel, so aren't we doing something? We would know that before. We are supposed to make an i7 processor, but we got an i3 processor while doing wafer testing. Is it something like that, or हमको पहले ही पता है हमको i7 करना है, इसलिए in this rows we have made this i7 processor and the next rows we have made i3 processor, or is it like ये तो कुछ भी हो गया, something has happened and due to some malfunction we have got an i3 processor or something like that?
Yeah, it could be that, no? So I gave the names of i3, i7 and i5, but let us say that have you seen that there are products which are exactly the same specification, but the frequency is lower, only frequency is lower? See, there is a difference between i3, i5 and i7. That difference is not just about speed, that difference is also about hardware. Okay. So that could be because some hardware on i5 failed and now you call it i3.
Okay, so my doubt was that actually पहले तो i3 बनता था, उसके बाद i7 आया. So have we done something unintentionally or something, so that by mistake you have got an i7 processor, or during the functional and test specification?
No. It was designed to be built as an i7 only. Therefore, we designed an i7. But when i7 could not, when there were some dies which could not really give that kind of functionality, and we felt the customer will not purchase them at that price point, we said, okay, we will sell them a little cheaper.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So let's not get into i3, i5, i7. Let me say that i7 ही है. Let us say it is only i7, but there are 3 different frequencies of i7 itself. And each of those i7s will sell at a slightly different price, sale point.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Akshat.
Sir, I have a question. Like, in last generation of Intel processors, something like happened in laptop that i5 is performing better than i7. So what kind of sorting issue was that? Sir, it actually happened and Intel was confused. So what kind of issue was that?
Yeah. So that is where machine learning comes into VLSI. Okay. So they defined some tests and they said that, okay, if these parameters on the particular die are positive, we will call it I5. If these additional 5 parameters are positive, we will call it I7. Okay, this was based on their understanding of the design that when these 5 additional parameters are also positive, that is when the performance will be better.
So it was not an hardware issue.
It was their understanding of how to sort.
Okay.
One way, so this is a bit confusing. They got confused. I don't know what exactly happened, but given from what he just said, they confused between I5 and I7 because there was a mix-up with the specification.
Yes, because they felt that this would be faster and it was not actually faster.
So I mean, isn't that like the job of, your design implementation and then your design characterization? I mean, if you're designing it such that, okay, it should be faster, you know that you're designing an i7, right? So if it's showing that particular speed, then how can you sort it differently?
See, it is not just about speed, Meher. Like, it is not just about clock frequency at which you are operating. Benchmarks actually test how well you are able to use the access to the memory, for example.
Okay.
Benchmarks would also relate to how easily you are able to transition from one thread to another. Benchmarks test a lot of things. And real life use cases are also like that. You're not, just looking at clock frequency and saying my system is faster. Finally, you go with your experience, An Apple chip, an Apple iPhone chip would typically, if you look at it, operate at a lower frequency, but has a much more fluid user experience than an Intel chip-based design.
So would you say that the fault was in the test specifications? That, okay, it did not test all the cases?
So it could be anywhere. It could be in their understanding. It could be in the design implementation. They had designed it such that the memory would, they have put in more memory and they said this will actually lead to better performance. But due to more memory, what happened was the wire lengths increased, let us say, and delays increased. So, or there was a bottleneck in terms of bandwidth, due to which the information transfer that you anticipated did not really happen at the same rate.
Right.
The fault could be anywhere. I'm just saying that if they say that, okay, this was expected to be faster and it is slower, it could be simply a die sort algorithm failure also.
Okay.
It could simply be that, but it could be anywhere else previous in the chain also.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So how do we resolve this kind of issue then? Like,
so you go back, review your design, you debug where did the assumptions go wrong, and then you correct those assumptions, redo so you cannot really undo what has already been shipped to the customer.
Yeah.
But the next chip design that you're doing, you have more mature assumptions now, and you will therefore design it better.
So, but the problem was with the fact that, I mean, one of the possible problems that, okay, you couldn't identify one type from another because it wasn't showing what you expected.
Yeah. So you will then upgrade. Yeah. So then you will upgrade your sorting algorithms, Meher.
Okay.
So the next lot that you will sort, you will have a better algorithm. So therefore, the problem will disappear after some time.
Okay.
So retrain your algorithms then. Okay. Yeah. So, give me a minute. So my PPT has kind of crashed. Give me a second. I will pause the recording and I will come back again. Just give me a minute. So once we have this, good overview of how a chip starts from a requirement analysis to finally shipping, we enter into this detail of how does the design implementation happen. Okay. So the first stage of the design implementation is initial design entry, where you say that, okay, I need this kind of memory, I need this kind of a processor, I need this kind of interfaces, DDRs, and so on. And then you do a design entry. This design entry is an RTL. Okay, you write a Verilog code, and that is RTL. Once you've done the design entry, you need to verify that this design is meeting the functionality that you wanted it to meet. So you simulate the RTL and do a quick power analysis that the power budget is also within the specified range. After that is done, you do the logic synthesis. Now, what do you understand by logic synthesis? There was already a question earlier about logic synthesis and layout. So what do you understand by logic synthesis?
It is mapping our RTL code to the gate level netlist, the connections between the gate interface.
So it is converting an RTL Verilog netlist into a gate level netlist. That, okay, you just said an adder, but an adder is implemented by using these kind of ANDs and ORs and XOR gates. Okay, so that implementation is synthesis. After the logic synthesis is done, you do test and clock synthesis. What do you think test and clock synthesis entails?
Sir, so like when we test our code, like when we're simulating, so you're using a clock signal that you have provided, but to actually generate a clock which will run in that system, you need to do a clock synthesis as well. Like, okay, I mean, it should run at 2.5 megahertz or so. So yeah, I mean.
So let us look at it like this. In the logic synthesis, you said you will put 1 million flip-flops on your chip. And for every flip-flop, you simply put the clock pin. Am I right?
Yes.
In reality, clock will be generated by some PLL somewhere, or you will get it from outside your chip. So there is one point on the chip where you will have the clock generated. And do you think that one point can drive all the 1 million flip-flops? No.
So we have clock buffers, right? I mean, in case
Yes.
of FPGA.
So you have to now arrange and organize these flip-flops in a particular way that, okay, these 10 flip-flops, this buffer would drive. These 10 flip-flops, another buffer would drive. So this part of inserting clock buffers, so that none of the clock pins or none of the clock signals nodes has a load more than, let us say, 100 femtofarads. Additionally, all the matched clock nodes, clock ends arrive at almost the same delay. So if there is one flip-flop and another flip-flop which were supposed to work simultaneously, it should not happen that because I put 10 buffers in one path and 5 in the other path, one flop operated much faster, much earlier than the other one. So if they were expected to operate synchronously and simultaneously, I have to put 10 buffers on both the paths. So this is clock synthesis. Similarly, as we talked about, initial functional specification and test specification, we look at test synthesis, that as to how will I make those scan chains? How will I test the entire chip once it is fabricated? So at this early stage itself, when you just at the logic synthesis stage or just right after that, you start to also do the test synthesis. You start to insert some test features also. Raghav, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Sir, in this clock synthesis, are you referring to the clock tree synthesis?
Yes.
And so one more thing. So like after the design entry, you have mentioned the power analysis. So but like design entry is in the RTL form. So we still don't have a kind of the components that will be involved. So what kind of power analysis that they're doing here? Like how would we know that what kind of power can be consumed?
So let us say I said that I will use a memory somewhere. Okay. And I have not gated the access to the memory. So memory, every clock cycle, memory is being accessed. I know that a memory will consume more power. I have models for memory also. So in that case, then what we see is, in that case, what we see is that the system will show that the power consumption is high, that you need to do power gating at some places to reduce overall power consumption. So you can change your RTL so that clock gating happens and memory is not accessed every cycle. It is only accessed when needed.
So, but my question is, so like RTL, at the RTL level, we are having only a behavior model. So like,
yeah, but okay, so it is not just behavioral model. So the models that you have, you know, the Verilog models that you have, many a times they are also associated with some top level information on power consumption and timings.
Okay, like apart from the netlist also.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
yes,
it's a kind of a basic doubt. So when we are talking about, you know, designing a chip, and are we talking about ASICs? Or
I'm sorry, can you please repeat?
are we talking about ASICs when we are talking about, you know, designing a chip? So
it could be an ASIC, it could be a ASSP, it could be anything. It could be a standard product altogether, a commodity product. Not even an ASIC and not even an ASSP. It is a standard chip.
Okay.
Anything. Okay. So you know the difference between ASICs and ASSPs and standard chips?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you're referring to by standard chips, though. I mean,
so like for example, Atmel 32 processor is a standard chip. It is available off the shelf. Anyone can come to the market and purchase it. STM32, it's a standard chip. Anyone can come. It is not defined or prepared for a particular application. Whereas, for example, Chorus is a product from ST, which is a specific chip for automotive industry, but it is again standard. It was not made specifically for Bosch. It was not made specifically for Rolls-Royce. It was just made so that any user, any car manufacturer can use it. Okay.
So you're saying that it's like programmable. It can be programmed as to the needs of the customer. But
no, it's not about programming. No. It is not just about programming, Meher. It is about application. For example, STM32 is a standard product. It would be used across any application. Whether you use it in a car, you can use STM32. Whether you use it in your Alexa, you can use an STM32. Whether it is Google Home, you can use STM32. Any application can use STM32. Even your smartwatch can use STM32. Okay. So any range of applications. It could be automotive. It could even be a satellite. It could be using STM32. So it is off-the-shelf available standard product. However, when I'm talking about, let us say, an automotive specific product, then that product is designed for a particular use inside cars only. For example, tire pressure monitoring sensor.
Yes.
Now, TPMS you will not use in your watch, will you?
No.
It will only be used in automotive sector. But it is not designed specifically for Bosch. It is a standard product. So it is application specific standard product, ASSP.
So, but like the features are somewhat the same, right? I mean, okay, you can only do these amount of things in this chip. I mean, and those amount of operations can be used in a car or in a watch or anywhere, but it's still fixed, right? You cannot change it. You cannot like it's not field programmable like FPGA.
Yeah, for example, so that is that there are multiple flavors of, let us say, STM32. Some flavors would have 1 kilobyte of non-volatile memory. Some flavors would have 32 kilobytes. Some would have 1 megabit.
Okay.
So that will limit what all you can store and what all. So that would change stuff. But otherwise, it is STM32. It is a standard product.
Okay. Right. Nice.
Okay. But ASSP is application specific standard product. Now, tire pressure monitoring sensor is a tire pressure monitoring sensor only. Any tire can use it, but it is specific to tire pressure monitoring.
Yes, sir.
And then there would be specific chips. For example, there will be a chip that Tesla orders, which says that I want a chip for car vision, so that I can go into self-driving cars.
Okay.
I want to use this particular algorithm so that it is most efficient for my purposes. Now that chip is an application specific IC.
Yes.
It is made specifically for one customer.
Okay.
It is much costlier for that customer, but customer may still want it for the competitive advantage.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Sir, please explain logic synthesis again.
Logic synthesis? Okay, I will do that. Rajnish, you were also saying something?
Sir, as you were saying about the STM32, sir. Sir, basically, what you are telling is just like the work of a microcontroller.
Yes.
So, sir, is it a microcontroller?
Yes, STM32 is a microcontroller.
Yes.
Okay. So, Prashubh,
yes,
logic synthesis involves, so RTL would say that, okay, move data from register R1 to R2, add R1 plus R2, whatever, something like this. But how would you move data? You would need to have some buffer somewhere.
Yes, sir.
How do you add two numbers? You need to have that propagate and generate thing coming in. You will have to have something coming in to add two numbers.
Yes, sir.
So what would those gates be? So RTL is almost like English language. But finally, silicon cannot understand English. Silicon would understand only some transistor language. Na?
Okay, sir.
So we don't even go to transistor language when we do logic synthesis. We go to gate language. So we come to arrive at a gate level netlist. We say that, okay, after this NAND gate, we will put an OR gate. And when these two NAND gates outputs connect on this OR gate inputs, the output of this OR gate is going to be A plus B. That A plus B, I need to now write into that. So we will convert all those Mealy machines and Moore machines and everything. And that is what is logic synthesis. So implementing your English language or a program code into a gate level netlist. Is it clearer?
Yes, sir.
So you do this logic synthesis, then you do test synthesis. Once all that is done, you know what kind of circuits and what is the total number of cells you need to put on your device. You enter into a stage which is called as floor planning. As to where would you put your processor, where would you put your memory, where would you put different parts of your chip. Okay. I want the memory to be as close to the processor so that there is no delay in accessing the memory. One could say that. Someone would say that I would want to put the PLL on this corner of the chip so that it does not encounter any noise. Someone would say I want to put ADC on this place. So that is floor planning. You're basically building a plan of how you would lay out your chip finally. Consider it like if you have to build a residential complex. You need to plan where the 5 towers, residential towers have to be, where the swimming pool has to be, where the clubhouse has to be, and so on. So that is what is like floor planning. And after while the floor planning is done, you also do stuff like power estimation, static timing analysis, gate level synthesis, and so on. Gate level simulation, and so on. So what does static timing analysis entail? Who will tell?
So we check that
timing verification.
The timing constraints are being met or not, the setup and hold constraints.
So
timing verification.
Yeah,
timing
flip-flops,
verification.
you know that flip-flops would have some setup time, some hold time, something. So when the clock arrives, the data should be set up. So whether that is happening or not, do you need to add some delay somewhere? So it is largely timing verification, timing characterization. Gate level simulation is once I've removed the English from A plus B and I've actually put an adder there, after all that logic conversion, is my netlist still operating the same way as I intended it to be? Okay. Then test structure verification is, I wanted to have a scan chain built there. I wanted to test different components independently. Am I able to really test them? Then power estimation. Now, since you have real gates available there, okay, you have real gates available there, you actually can estimate what kind of power consumption will happen. And then you also check that, okay, ऐसा तो नहीं हो रहा that there are two outputs driving one single node. So, or that there is some input that is floating, or that there is a load on a particular gate which it cannot even bear to hold. So all these checks you do. While you do these checks, and as you complete these checks, you also release your netlist, which is now reasonably stable because it has met all these logical standards, to the layout. Now you say, okay, this was where I wanted to put my tower 1. This was where I wanted to put my tower 2. Now is the time to build the towers. Okay. So now you will start to place the windows, the walls, and everything over there, and this is what you would be. This is the final shape of a residential complex. And layout is essentially the final shape of your design. So you start to put the layout of the AND gate as to how it will appear on silicon. You put the layout of the NOR gate, of the adder, of everything, of the memory. So all those things you now start to put together, and you now do timing driven layout optimization. That, okay, the output of this AND gate is going into this OR gate. So let me place this AND gate and OR gate together. Okay. So that is layout driven, timing driven layout optimizations. Once you've done that, you again need to do static timing analysis, because now you now know the additional information of how long a wire is there between two different gates. Till now, you only knew that this NAND connects to that NOR. Now you know that when this NAND connects to that NOR, there is also this long wire in between them. So the delays would change. And you need to do a timing analysis all over again.
Sir? Yeah,
yes.
So, I mean, so the static timing analysis we did after the floor planning, we were not taking into account the routing delays.
So you would use some model, Meher, there. You would assume that, okay, most of the wires, like you will use a statistical model based on your earlier analysis. Some other chips you had designed. So you know that, okay, most of my wires were 1 micron in length, and a few wires were 10 microns in length, and very few wires were 100 microns in length. So based on that, you will statistically distribute those wire. So this is called a wire load model. So you distribute those wire loads on some different places, and you would do it. But now you actually have the real wire length available with you.
Okay. Okay.
So this is a more realistic analysis. So you do STA all over again. And you do post layout technology checks now. That is DRC clean, is LVS clean, is every gate connected to or every poly connected to a diode or a drain somewhere. Otherwise, there could be, antenna violations, and the chip would fail after fabrication and all that stuff. Okay.
So, the thing you said about if it's connected to the drain or diode wasn't it a part of gate level simulation? Like
no.
You have synthesis.
Diodes are not. Diodes have no functionality per se.
So yeah, how did we skip that in a gate level simulation? Because
diode is not a gate. Meher, diode is not a gate. Diode is not a gate.
I mean, it's a part of your combinational logic delay. So like,
what combinational logic does diode represent?
I mean, it just merely acts as a switcher, but like
no.
If you
the diodes that I'm talking about here are so that due to fabrication, there could be a lot of ion deposition on your polysilicon gates, and you need to discharge them. Otherwise, the gate breakdown will occur. These are physical checks, technology linked checks.
Okay. Okay. Can you just elaborate on that further? I'm a little confused.
We will look at that in more detail later, but yeah, so when you manufacture silicon, you actually put very high energy, how do I put it, plasma onto your dies. Okay, this can lead to a lot of charge buildup on your dies, and that charge needs to be sunk into the substrate. Otherwise, there can be dielectric breakdown somewhere because of very high voltage.
Okay.
So every polysilicon gate needs to be connected to some drain or source, something like that, so that that charge has a path to discharge.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
And if there is none, you have to put a diode.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So this is not a part of logic synthesis at all. Raghav, you also wanted to ask something?
Yes, sir. So this timing driven layout optimization, is it a part of like the routing part like that?
Yes. Placement, place and route. Yes.
Okay. And so one more thing. So this power estimation and the earlier power analysis that we done just after design entry, like estimation and analysis, does have a different connotation or like, or
yes,
is it about the accuracy?
It has a different connotation in the sense that when you did it the first time, you did not really have the exact numbers because you did not know the exact gates that would be used to implement your design. You just saw that, okay, this processor is being accessed 2000 number of times. Can I reduce it somehow? It was an architectural level thing. So this memory is being accessed every cycle. Can I reduce the number of accesses to the memory?
Okay, sir.
And but so now you actually have the power consumption that happens in every cycle, and now you're estimating it. And now you can tell, oh, I reduce it to 50%. Now I actually need to reduce it to 20% only.
Okay, so at the power estimation, we are having the specific amount of power consumed at every cycle, like.
Yeah, because synthesis has happened. Now I know every device.
Yes, sir. And so one more thing, so that you have mentioned this clock synthesis before the flow planning. Generally in a flow, we generally see that after done the placement and full planning and the placement, then we do the kind of this clock tree synthesis. But here you have put before.
See, synthesis would happen alongside floor planning actually. So that is where the link is. So test and clock synthesis leads to two things, floor planning and this. But you see that is a horizontal connect. So it could actually be happening in parallel also. They feed into each other.
Okay. So can you just briefly explain this, how these interconnections are made between the different boxes you have made? Actually, it's getting a bit like.
Yeah. So the ones, for example, static timing analysis, gate level synthesis, etc., they are all running in parallel. They do not. So while STA has something to do with floor planning and other stuff, gate level simulations has nothing to do with it. So in the STA box, I also show an entry of floor planning, but I do not show an entry of floor planning into gate level synthesis, for example. Okay. The output of STA goes for timing assertions. It also goes for SDF and RC and CAP estimation, and that information also come back to STA. So that is also shown as an input there and an output there. So if you look at these ones, these are reverse loops. That okay, if after STA I realize that something is not working, it means I will go back to this stage. I will redo the timing driven layout optimization. Okay, if I notice that, so when I release the netlist from here, I also release timing assertions so that they can be used for timing driven layout optimization. I release timing assertions to layout also. So these are not just one way, at least these ones over here. They may not necessarily be one way routes. They could be also both ways. Okay.
So timing assertions are basically the adjustment of the timing we are doing after STA. So likewise, if some gate is failing or not.
Yes, you may say that this device is so far away from there that I need to put in some extra buffers in the other path.
Okay.
Or bring these two devices closer. So that is the layout driven timing optimization section. Yes, Akshat.
So power estimation is done before timing optimization, as I can see in this.
Alongside. So you see STA is happening alongside STA and power estimation are happening in the parallel plane.
So, sir, I want to know that power and load and idle power also matters.
Yes.
So after, like, I can see that before releasing to Foundry, there's no again power testing or something. Like when every optimization is done, every kind of optimization, there's no again power test or something.
Yeah. So what happens is, when you actually go into chip designing, you will notice that if you've done the gating and everything properly over here, and you've done verifications at gate level simulations and power estimation, then after the layout, not really much would change. Wires would change, they will reflect into STA. So as soon as you do this SDF and RF, you again come back to this level. So you do STA again, you may want to do some other checks of this place again. That can happen. But because there is some extra wire somewhere, because of that, power is not going to change from 1 milliwatt to 2 milliwatts. It may go from 1 milliwatt to 1.01 milliwatts.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Because you had used some wire load model even initially. And it is a fair, based on earlier products only. It's not a random thing picked up from somewhere. So many ICs have been designed till date that we have a fair amount of an idea that an IC of this complexity would use this kind of a wire load distribution. So power estimation does not really change much after this stage.
Okay, sir.
Because you already have the post layout library characterized, na? Okay.
So what is a wire load model?
A wire load model, okay. So when I say that there are these many AND gates and these many NAND gates on a chip, they need to be connected, is it not? So there will be wires in between them. These wires will lead to loading of your gates. So what length of wire to assume between, or what length of wire to assume at the output of a given gate, that is probabilistically set through a model which is called as wire load model. Does that help?
So what is that block? What is that block in left corner? Like below left corner.
Below left corner, SDF, RC, and CAP.
No, actually there is RC and CAP block. Yeah. What is the function of that?
So after you have finally designed your entire chip, you will do a post layout extraction. So you will see now finally what are my capacitances at different places. And with those load capacitances now, is my STA, is my timing still correct or not? If it is not, you will go back to the STA stage and you will do a layout driven optimization all over again. So there will be ECO of some parts of your chip. ECO means engineering change order. So some things you will need to change so that your delays and everything are still intact. Okay.
And so the block which represents a test structure verification, is that connected to BFT and such things?
Yes. Yes. Raghav, you had a question? Your hand is raised.
Yes, sir. So this, can you just say there was a static time analysis and timing assertion? So what's the difference here?
Oh, so static timing analysis said that, okay, before the layout, I assume that there is some kind of a wire load on between the two, between the two gates. And I would say that this is what my timing is, because I assumed some load. Now, there could be some race conditions where the slack is very less. So you will tell that, oh, I do not really have margins here, so please do not increase the cap of this wire more than that. So what does that mean for the layout? It means that these two cells have to be placed close together. They cannot be kept far away.
Okay, so sir, it's kind of a directive for the optimization that do this, keeping this in mind.
Yes, they are timing assertions. Yes.
Okay, sir.
Madhur, you have a question?
Yes, sir. So what's the difference between gate level simulation and test structure verification?
So gate level simulation would typically test only the functional modes. Okay. Test structure verification would typically test only the test modes.
I didn't get it. So what's the difference? What are the test modes? And I mean, functional modes is the functionality that we expect. But what is
So let us look at it like this. When I want to do a face recognition on an Apple chip, that is a function. I will test that face recognition and I will say this is working fine or not. However, for that particular chip, I need to keep a memory which is, let us say, 1 kilobit by 1 kilo words and 32 bits each word. 1K cross 32 memory I need to keep. During a functional mode, I may not actually access every memory cell, every memory location with both kind of data, 0 and 1. Let us say. So, but this was just the test program that you wrote. In reality, when the customer face would actually come, any bit can be 0 and any bit can be 1. So for every memory, you have to test every bit for both 0 and 1. Your test cases may not have everything when you're designing test cases only for the functional mode. So you design a separate BIST. You add a built-in self-test into the overall system, which would access the memory for every location and write 0 and 1 on every location, so that everything is tested. Now, gate level simulation, you don't run the BIST, but in test structure verification, you will test the BIST. Does this help, Madhur?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Gagandeep?
Sir, after the layout, when I want to go to STA, then I am necessarily changing the wire load models only, right?
So now you're not changing the wire load model. You're actually extracting the wire loads and putting that into the netlist.
Yes, sir. Changing the netlist wire load model from the
No, again, there is no model now, Gagandeep. Now this is the real thing that you're putting back in there. Model was an estimate. Model was an extrapolation. Now this is the real thing you're putting, real capacitance you're putting there.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Diveen?
Yeah, sir. So what you said about test structure verification, just to confirm, you're testing every single possibility. So,
yes.
Right, isn't that kind of expensive? I mean, you're testing all.
So you tell me.
Like if you have
you enter into a car which was tested only for good road conditions. Would you drive that car?
So I mean, you have to make test conditions which will accommodate to every type of input.
So exactly. So that is what test structure verification is. But otherwise, gate level simulation is okay. My car is starting fine. It is receiving inputs from all the different sensors. It is working fine. That is gate level simulation.
So for example, when you're writing a computer code and you're testing it, right? So you might have like a million different test cases, but to accommodate each function, I mean, you only need a limited number of test cases, which test all the different possibilities. So doesn't this?
A test is a very, very significant cost. Okay. We will come to it. We'll come to it later in this in the next lecture. But test is a very significant cost. You actually have to test it very exhaustively.
So if in the gate level simulation, you're testing for those test specifications you have given, and then in test structure verification, you're testing each possibility. So what's the point of the previous step?
The point of the previous step is, okay, I just said that for memory, you have a BIST there. Okay. Now I tested the memory with the BIST. I know memory is functioning fine. Similarly, I test the processor with its logic BIST. All that logic is working fine. Do I not need to also test that the interface of memory and logic is working fine?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that is what is the purpose of gate level simulation. That the functionality that you wanted, you are getting that. Then test structure is each component that you have put in itself is robust.
Okay, so gate level simulation is for the functionality, and then test structure verification is you're going into the fine details that okay, every single component is individually working fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I have 3 people raising their hands. Madhur. Divin.
So the question was once again related to test structure verification. So in gate level simulation, we know that our circuit has this particular function. So in test structure verification, we are basically pushing it to its limits and finding out if there is any error.
Yes and no. So in a gate level simulation, I'm connecting the processor and the memory and all the different slaves of the processor and testing that everything as a system is working fine. In test structure verification, I'm putting the BIST into question and saying that is my memory working fine completely or not? Is my set of bank of flip-flops working fine completely or not? Given whatever input set.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's sort of like corner case testing.
Yes, it is something like, okay, मेरे को एक car बनानी है. I want to build a car. So at one point of time, I tested that the car starts and it runs well. Okay. And at another point of time, I tested just the engine separately, that it is giving me the horsepower that I require. And at another test, I'm testing only the tires that they are giving me the kind of grip that I require. So one thing was system level testing. The other thing is doing tests specific to the engine, so that I'm sure that engine will work even at minus 40 degrees Celsius and even at 125 degrees Celsius.
So like separate modules are being tested.
Yes. So one thing is more about module level testing and ensuring that every module is well tested. Okay. It also has some system level tests, but gate level simulation is more about functional testing. Okay. That all the required functionality is in there, is built in there. So once you have that, once you do, then finally you do the ATPG, automatic test pattern generation, and you release the stuff to the foundry. That okay, all my tests, all my timings, everything is closed. My power is within the budget. Everything is fine. Please fabricate it. Okay. And I tell you, each block over here is a kind of an independent job in industry. Each of these blocks is an independent job. Now, it may happen that there is a team that does all these 5 things. So there are people who are doing all these 5 things in one project or another. So they get exposed to all these 5 things. But it could also be in a particular case that one person is doing only this or this. STA hi kar raha hai wo bas. Post layout STA. That is the only thing he is doing. That can also happen. So each one of these is a specialized domain. So orange, yellow, and green could be different teams, or they could be actually independent jobs. Each block could be an independent job profile. Okay. So I think we should stop here. We will go to the abstractions levels in the next class. Okay. Any pending questions that you forgot to ask?
Sir, I have one. Sir, this after the yellow row, so mostly still I have not gone to the physical level. No. We are still at the logical level only.
Yes.
So, but after, yes, sir. So, but like in this, after the static time analysis, you have connected it to the SDF, RC, and CAP. So, what is that?
So, SDF, RC, and CAP are inputs from after the layout has been made back into static timing analysis.
Okay, okay. So it's going the other way around, not
yes.
Coming from
arrow is on the other side. Yes.
So from the below, it's going up. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sir.
Okay. So, anything else?
So, what kind of checks are done during pre-layout technology checks?
during pre-layout technology checks. Pre-layout technology checks, as I mentioned that, okay, even at the gate level netlist, the load of any one of my gates is not greater than 200 femtofarads. That is kind of a pre-layout. You don't even need to know the layout. You know that every gate has some input capacitance. So depending on what the fan out that you have connected, you can estimate the overall load on any particular gate. So these are like pre-layout technology checks. Quick estimates. Because if you need to do some buffering, you do it right away so that the netlist already has it and then you release it to the layout. Okay. Okay then. Thank you guys. All the best. Sorry, the class got extended a bit, but I think there were questions. I didn't want to kill those questions. We will meet on Wednesday now. Okay.
Sir?
Yes. Is there a question?
Sir, can you confirm your office hours and the TA's office hours? It was left out in the previous slide, I think so.
Yeah, so we will have a final confirmation on Monday because Monday means so I will release them on Monday morning, early morning, because it may happen that the TAs themselves would not have frozen their courses yet. So we will release the office hours on Monday morning. As you guys had requested, I will keep some office hours tomorrow. But then I will not have any office hours on Monday. I will release that schedule of office hours on the Google Classroom. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All the best.